poetry. A couple of weeks ago, Bill and Elsie and Kim and I and a dozen or so other people were in the Judean wilderness. Literally, we were on the Jericho Road. You'll remember that road from the story of the Good Samaritan. We were standing in a place in the desert, surrounded by hills, very close hills. If there were a group of bandits hiding behind a hill, they were very close, but we'd never see them, and we couldn't escape as soon as they appeared because they were so near. It's a scary place. This is why Jesus tells that story of this man who was beset upon by criminals, by bandits, out there in the middle of nowhere. So here's what we did. We gathered there in the middle of nowhere on the Jericho Road, and we prepared a table in the potential presence of enemies. Celebrated the Holy Eucharist. And when we set that table out there in the desert, we put on it bread and wine. The psalm was coming to my mind. I could imagine the bandits attacking the Good Samaritan, or the victim in the Good Samaritan story. I could imagine them behind every hill. And those words, he prepares a table for me in the presence of my enemies, just became very real to me. Psalm 23 was running through my head for the next couple of days. A few days later, we were in Bethlehem, and we're standing in the field that's now called Shepherd's Field. It's where historically the shepherds would graze their feet at night, and they had caves there, which we explored, where the shepherds would be. And I was able to imagine David, this little boy, like a little Bedouin boy that we saw on the pilgrimage, who was stuck there watching the sheep because he was the youngest, the smallest, and the pecking order went downhill. All his brothers were off someplace else. David was stuck shepherding the sheep. A more boring job has probably never been invented. And while David was there, being the shepherd, he had memories of his caring for the sheep, his feeding the sheep, his causing the sheep to recline, if you're going to anthropomorphize it. Because how did people eat in those days? They reclined. They didn't have chairs and backs and tables. They reclined, usually on a cushion. But when the psalm says, he makes me lie down in green pastures, that's what he really saying. I'm causing you to recline, that is, come to a banquet. And of course, green pastures, well, that's very English. You know what we didn't see anytime, anywhere? A pasture, right? But they do have oases right along the Jordan River. And wherever there's a spring, you would find an oasis, which, by the way, just happens to be the Hebrew word that we translate green pastures. So he is giving us a banquet in an oasis. Isn't that beautiful? Hard to translate it into English. But again, Psalm 23 came alive for me there in Shepherd's Field. David's role reversal. Once upon a time, David, as a little boy, was the shepherd caring for the sheep. But when he writes Psalm 23, he's now a grown man, and he understands the role reversal. I was the shepherd once upon a time caring for the sheep. Now, who's the shepherd? God is the shepherd. I am sheep. The Lord is my shepherd. No wants. Nothing's lacking. He gives me a banquet in the oasis. He leads me beside still waters. Some of us who were there saw such a still water when we stopped at one of the baptismal sites. The water was flat, calm, surrounded by vegetation. I stepped into the water with my aspergillium and sprinkled everybody as we renewed our vows. But the place was so peaceful, so lovely. Unlike natural water in Israel and Palestine, which is in these deep ravines running downhill because there's no flat land anywhere. It's all up and down. If you were a sheep trying to get a drink from one of those, you'd get washed away. The song, Bridge Over Troubled Water, came to mind. And I thought about what a blessing it was for God to provide us still water where we could drink without dying. But there's something even more exciting in this song. Verses 1 and 2 talk about God in the third person. They're talking about God. They're talking about God. Verses 3 and 4, God is no longer in the third person, he's in the second person. The psalmist is no longer talking about God. He is talking to God. He's talking with God. Psalms, or verses 1 and 2, are about belief. David believes there is a God. Verses 3 and 4 are prayer. David is connecting with God. You see the difference? You see, the scriptures are full of the idea that it's possible to believe about God. In fact, James says, even the demons believe there is a God. But the demons have no relationship with God. And what Christianity is about, it's not about being a nice person. Oh, that's not a bad place to start. We could use a little more nice people. But it's not about that. And it's not even believing that there is a God. It's not about beliefs versus unbeliefs. What Christianity is about is a connection with God, face to face with God, experiencing the presence of God, knowing God and being known by God intimately. Why is it that David has no fear when he's walking through the valley of shadows where death may occur? It's not because he has a belief about God, but because he has a relationship with God. Listen to it. The Lord, third person, is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restores my soul. He leads me in paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff protect me. You prepare a table for me in the presence of my enemies. The enemies are there. He hasn't done away with them. But I don't need to fear the enemy because God, you are preparing the table. You are with me. You are here. You anoint my head with oil. My cup has more than it can hold. Surely goodness and mercy shall, oh, what a terrible translation, follow. Terrible translation. The word really means pursue doggedly. Surely goodness and mercy will hunt me down no matter where I am. They will hunt me down no matter how much I ignore. They will hunt me down no matter how much I disbelieve or fear or worry or forget. No matter how far I run, God is going to hunt me down. Because he's the shepherd. And I may, like any stupid sheep, dismiss it. Bah! Bah! I may run and hide and get lost. But the good shepherd will hunt me down to pour out his goodness and his mercy on me. Isn't that a great psalm? I will encourage you, if you have become bored with Psalm 23, try singing it, try chanting it, try reading it in a different translation. Take a 3 or 4 year course in Hebrew and read it in the actual language, but live with it. Because we are not people who believe that there is a God. We are people that are delighted that God will hunt us down, will be with us, and will insist on having a relationship with us. In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen.